What if we told you that you could travel the world while you're still working, still building your career or building your business, and you don't have to be an influencer or a gazillionaire to do it? Regular, everyday people are making the lifestyle work of combining work and travel. We know because we've done it. And in this video, we're going to share how we made it work and tips how you can do it too.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Dawn.
And we're the unretirees. And as I was approaching the traditional retirement age, we knew we didn't want to retire, but we also didn't want to put off our dream of living abroad and traveling the world either.
So today we make our life on the Silver Coast of Portugal, and on this channel we talk about living abroad, remote work, and travel over 50.
We invite you to like this video, subscribe, and to click the bell notification so that you never miss a new video. We also have a free weekly newsletter, and we're going to leave the link below so that you can sign up.
Now before we jump in to today's topic, I just have to say, wow, you guys, like just wow. So many of you joined us after our last video about how we monetized in 78 days, and we have been overwhelmed this week by all your messages of kindness and support. And I think the thing that's been really exciting is that there's so many of you watching from all over the world, and it's really this global community of people who are saying, you know what, I'm over 50, but I still feel like I have something to contribute. I have something to say. And it's a community of people who are really seeing turning 50 as a new starting line, not a finish line. And we just want to say thank you so much. This last week has been so fun getting a chance to connect with each of you. And I know you're watching from all over the world. So take a moment and in the comments, just tell us where you're watching from today. We'd love to say hello.
So what do we mean when we say you can combine your travel and work at the same time? Well, instead of trying to cram all of your travels into an annual vacation leave that maybe is just a couple of weeks long, you instead go somewhere and log in from wherever you are. So maybe you're sipping an espresso in Paris, or golfing in Scotland, or surfing in Costa Rica.
Now, it sounds idyllic, and it really is. We love our life on the Silver Coast. There are some pros and cons to think about for this kind of life. We're going to talk about those, but it is much more realistic than you may think, and we're going to talk about that as well.
So the idea of work and travel, it really isn't new, but there are a few reasons why it's become more popular now than ever. The first reason is just the idea of remote work. I mean, the pandemic made remote work much more acceptable. More jobs that were not considered remote jobs could now be done remotely. So that is a big one, and people are realizing that they can do these remote jobs from anywhere in the world. In many instances, they don't even need to be housed or located in the same country that their job is.
Now, another reason is the rise of the digital nomad visas. We did an entire video about this, and I'll link it above. But just in brief, the trend of remote work, because of that, countries have recognized that they have a way to bring foreign money into their local economy by issuing digital nomad visas. And so right now, more than 60 countries all across the world have digital nomad visa programs available. Again, we've got a whole video about this that you can watch if you want to know more about that.
Well, another reason is, frankly, online businesses are easier than ever to start and to run. As long as you have a strong internet connection, you can be running your business from anywhere. So this has given entrepreneurs an incredible amount of freedom.
I think another reason for this work and travel lifestyle that more and more people are embracing really had to do with the pandemic and just how we are all thinking about our mental health differently these days. We see more and more people, there's lots of articles about this, and we see it in our own lives. There are just more and more people who are opting out of the whole hustle culture and climbing the corporate ladder and choosing a better balance between work and life instead. I know that for us, it was a radical difference. It made a radical difference to how we view this next stage of our own lives.
So those are some of the reasons why, but let's talk about how work and travel combine for many people. Now, there are different ways that people approach this, but here are several examples. The first is being a full-time digital nomad. Now, these are people who move from place to place to place to see great things, but to also work from those different places. And maybe they're there for a few weeks or for a few months or maybe even up to a year.
Now, another idea that's gaining a lot of popularity is the idea of taking a gap year in your 40s or 50s or 60s. Now, we often think about gap years as that year between high school and college, but more and more people are choosing to use remote work to take that gap year so they can travel, but they're also working during that time. And it's been a really great way for pre-retirees to check out other places in the world that they may want to live in retirement.
A third example would be a slow traveler. Now, this is a person who maintains their home base in whatever their country is, but they then spend 1 to 3 months at a new location and they're working from there. And maybe they tack on another location after that if they would like to, but they still maintain their home base. And then the fourth option is doing what we do, which is being an expat. We actually have moved our home base from the United States and we are now full-time residents in Portugal.
So there's these 4 key ways: digital, nomad, gap year, slow travel, and expat. We'd love to hear from you. Which one of these most appeals to you? Tell us in the comments below. Now here's how it works for us. Matt works full-time for a company that is based in the US. I work part-time, I run an online business, and together we also manage a small portfolio of short-term rentals.
So here is how we combine work and travel as expats. So first and foremost, because we're in Portugal and based in Portugal, there's a lot to discover in Portugal. So we actually spend quite a bit of time, either whether it's in the mornings or whether it's on the weekends, exploring the different parts of Portugal. So that's one way. The second way, honestly, it is so cheap and convenient to get to other great locations within Europe. And flights are cheap and quick to get to great locations, so we can go away for the weekend very easily. The third is to do a slow travel situation where, even though we're based in Portugal, let's say we want to go somewhere and spend several weeks or a month or 2 months in a new location. It's easy for us to do that as well. And we're able to do all of these things while continuing to work and operate a business.
Now for us, this lifestyle is the ideal alternative to traditional retirement. As Matt said earlier, we didn't want to retire. We really struggled with how do we walk away from a career that we actually really enjoy and still feel like we have a lot more to contribute to. But we also wanted to travel when we were still relatively young and healthy enough to enjoy it. And so this has been just the perfect lifestyle for us. But there are some pros and cons.
So first, let's talk about the pros. Big one here is work-life balance. So because we're able to work wherever we are and travel whenever we want to, we actually feel like it's such a great thing because we don't have to wait for our vacation every year to actually go and do or see something interesting. We can do that anytime that we want.
The other great thing about that is that we just don't experience burnout in the same way that we used to because we're not waiting for a vacation to sort of travel and relax. We're able to really balance those a little bit better. But another thing that is a real pro of this lifestyle for us is that we see things that we wouldn't otherwise see as travelers. I'll give you an example. Recently, we went up to the Basque Country. We took a road trip. It was about 10 hours. It was an ambitious road trip. But I had wanted to see the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain, in northern Spain for a really long time. Now, this had been on my bucket list, but I don't know that we would have ever really gotten there because it wasn't close to anywhere else that we had high on our bucket list. It wasn't particularly easy to get to from the US, and it just felt a little more out of the way. And as much as I wanted to see the museum, I don't know that we ever would have if we were just trying to pack that into a couple of weeks of vacation per year. But not only were we able to see that museum, but we stayed in San Sebastian, which was a place that neither of us really knew a lot about, and we fell in love with it. It's now probably one of our favorite places that we've ever traveled to, and we would have missed that. We also were able to drive into Biarritz in France, another really beautiful place. And if we, again, were trying to pack all of that into just a couple weeks of vacation a year, there's just so much that we would have missed.
Well, and one of the other things is because we took this road trip and our destination was Bilbao and San Sebastian and Biarritz, we stopped midway to have some lunch at a town we had never heard of, which probably many of you have because maybe you're more well-traveled than we are, but Salamanca, Spain. And we had no idea, but this was a fabulous, fabulous city. It was beautiful and old and lively, and it was it was such a surprise, and it's certainly one of the things that we would have never ever stumbled on had we been in the US and deciding where to travel in Europe.
And as travelers, we love that. We love stumbling across gems and out of the way places that we wouldn't experience. That's one of the reasons that we made this change. And the best part of this for us is that we didn't have to wait until retirement to experience this. We're still able to work towards some of those professional goals that we have. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And the balance of both of those things has given us, as Matt said, just a terrific work-life balance.
But there also are some disadvantages to this work and travel lifestyle, and let's talk about a few of them. The first one is disconnection. Now, thinking about it from a workplace standpoint, you may have, if you were working during the pandemic, you may have experienced this with everybody doing remote work. In a remote work environment, you have to work very hard to not make everything just transactional. You have to really build in some opportunities to be relational in order to make this work. So for example, I manage a team that is on 3 continents, so all of our activity or almost all of our activity is taking place on Zoom. But I spend the first several minutes of every Zoom call building relationships, asking questions about people personally and what their life is like, because I want to continue to build that relationship and not make each call a transactional call. Because I do think building relationships and having that relational aspect to your coworkers is really important.
I think you're really good at that too. That's really a leadership strength you have. Another way that this can create disconnection is with community. I think that the fact that we travel so much has made it a little bit slower to build community here in Portugal, just because we're just not around as much and we miss out on things. And we also miss out on just that time that you need to cultivate those new relationships. So that's something that we're learning to be very intentional about, even as we balance this travel. And so there are a few ways that we've been working on that. One decision that we made was that Matt joined a golf club. That's been a really great experience for him to meet people from really all over the world. Stunning golf course also. And another thing is that we've joined a local church. That was really important to us. And they do have expat meetup groups. I admit we have not been great about those yet, but we are committed to being better about it.
So one of the other disconnection points is, or could be, with family. So now this is really a big one. We have 2 grown sons, and Dawn's dad is in his 90s and lives in the US. And we have siblings, and then some of them have kids, and they're spread all out through the US. So from a day-to-day standpoint, being here in Portugal hasn't changed our interactions with them that much, because they're already spread out, and travel is going to be a component to actually seeing just about any of them.
So we do have to be much more intentional about maintaining those connections with our family and our friends, and we need to build that in to our rhythm within our year of travel. So here's a couple of ways that we do that. Number one, we bring our sons out. We brought them out for the holidays. They were with us for a couple of weeks this year. We have a standing trip every year to go out to California to see my dad and our youngest son, and then we also travel back to New York, where we see our oldest son, and also that's where our company is based. And Matt has a group of guys he's golfed with every year for almost 25 years. We have text chains, obviously, to stay in touch with some of the more day-to-day with family and friends. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to be more intentional to maintain those connections.
One of the other disadvantages is just, frankly, travel has an element of uncertainty to it, right? Is the bed going to be comfortable? Is the place that you're staying actually going to work out? Are the pillows okay, right? Is there a comfortable place to sit? Is there a good place to work? There's all kinds of elements that go into a vacation home that when you're going to apply work to it, it becomes a different thing. And so we have developed, sort of for us, almost a checklist of things that we look for to make sure that to make sure that a place has the highest chance to be really good. And I think one of the big ones, of course, is strength of Wi-Fi, because all of our work and perhaps all of your work takes place over the internet these days. And so you need to have reliable Wi-Fi available. But one of the things that we actually are considering doing, and we haven't done it yet, but considering doing, is getting one of the Starlink connections, which then would allow us to at least have assurances that wherever we are, we could have Wi-Fi.
And another disadvantage is really just the daily habits, right? If you want to go to the gym or you want to eat healthy, that can be disruptive when you travel. It can be a little bit harder to stay on top of some of those daily habits. So some things that we've done to kind of navigate this is that we're always sure to stay somewhere where we can go out and get a good long walk in. We love to walk when we travel, so getting exercise isn't typically a challenge for us, but we do like to think about where we stay and is it something that we can place where we can just easily get out and walk around. And then the other thing is that we book Airbnbs typically, or short-term rentals, instead of hotels. And the reason that we do that is so that we can cook at home, and we do a lot more research up front about restaurants and things like that, just because when you're young, you can just kind of land somewhere and figure it out. Or if you are just on vacation for a couple of weeks, maybe you can think, well, whatever, I'm on vacation. But when travel is so much of your regular rhythm, there needs to be some sort of plan and normalcy we have found in order to stay on track with some of those other types of goals. Now, let me be clear. These are disadvantages, but we considered these to be absolutely minor, small inconveniences that we would navigate happily all day, every day. We know how fortunate we are to be able to live this life. And so these are not things that we are complaining about, but if it's a lifestyle that you're thinking about for yourself, they are some things that I think it's smart to think about.
Okay, so those are the pros and cons, but let's talk about really the practicalities of making this work. And we think about those in three areas. One is keeping a schedule, staying productive, and for us, managing our dog.
Now, we know that this might be different for everybody, but a schedule is something that is important because it really does take some discipline to do this kind of life. And so here's how it works for us. We do absolutely keep a schedule. And so we'll get up in the morning. We have our mornings to ourselves. We work US hours, so we don't start working until the afternoon. So that means that we get up. We don't use an alarm clock. We get up when we want to. So unless we're traveling, we don't ever use an alarm clock, which is nice. We have all morning to explore and to see parts of Portugal, run errands sometimes as well. And then we will have a lunch. We'll have a siesta, and then we start our day. We are rested, we're relaxed, we're not stressed out after a big long commute. And then we'll work into the evening, and then sometimes we'll go out to dinner. It's Europe, so all the restaurants are open very late, and that's really what a Monday through Friday schedule looks like for us.
It is. We still need to maintain some flexibility, though. I mean, working 2 to 10 at night, we can try to put all of our meetings as much as possible during our afternoon and early evening sessions. But honestly, there are some times where meetings need to take place at 4 p.m. New York time, which is 9 p.m. our time, or even on occasion, probably once every several weeks, I've got a meeting that takes place in the evening New York time, which is middle of the night for me. So it's not unusual for me to have a meeting that may start at 8 o'clock in New York. That's 1 a.m. here. But it's just a thing I've got to do, right? It's in order to be here and doing the work that I have to do, it's on me to make that work for my company, not on my company to make it work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about how this schedule differs compared to the US. And you can probably guess, but when we were in the US, we worked, 9 to 5 essentially. And it just felt like so much of our day was devoted to work, because you get up, you have breakfast, you get ready, You commute if you're a commuter, you work all day, you commute home. Like, it just felt like at the end of the day that we were exhausted, and there were a lot of nights where we just ended up, I think, collapsing in front of Netflix. And it really felt like our lives and the things that were important to us kind of got the leftovers of our energy during the day. And now we don't feel that way. We feel like we are able to really devote time and energy to the things that are important to us in addition to work. And the schedule works so much better for us. We're not giving the leftovers of our time and mental energy to side projects or relationships or exploring or travel or any of the other things that are also important to us. We feel like it's balanced, and that's made us much better workers, much more focused at work, and as I said earlier, much less stressed out and much less likely to burn out.
So the next thing is how to stay productive when you're in this mode of work and travel. And look, one of the things that we've done is that we have moved everything in our lives to being managed on an application called Notion. So we've gotten rid of other productivity apps and software and even sticky notes, and we just do everything on Notion.
Yeah, Notion was really a game changer for us. We have, between us, I think, used every productivity software, app, planner, you name it. But Notion was really fit everything for our life. It's completely customizable. It's a lot less expensive than other productivity tools, and we put everything in there. And I don't think that we could do this travel and work lifestyle without Notion, because anything we need, it's right there. We can pull it up on our phone, and it makes everything really easy. So we are able to stay productive when we travel, largely because of how we've organized our Notion workspace.
Yeah, and Notion is great. We use Notion for all of our important documents, including documents related to our dog. And so the third thing we want to talk about was how to manage, or how we manage our lives with our dog. We have a 3-year-old rescue named Riley. He's 55 pounds, so he's a little bit bigger than you could put in the cabin of an airplane. So it makes it a little bit challenging to think about having him on an airplane, but we manage it, and here's how. So a lot of our trips are just day trips that we take to explore beaches or trails or other parts of Portugal. And we just put him in the car and take him with us, and he has a great time and we have a great time. And I think that it works out really, really well. But there are times where we're exploring Portugal. It just isn't an appropriate place to take a dog. So for example, if you're gonna go for the day in Lisbon, and want to go to a nice restaurant or something like that, you just can't have a dog in that situation. And so for us, we've got a great local dog walker who will come in and take care of Riley while we're away.
Now, if we're going to be gone longer, then we actually try to take our dog with us wherever we go. We do spend a lot of time outdoors, so taking our dog with us works out most of the time. Now, one of the things that we did when we first moved to Portugal is that we got a passport for our dog. Now, this was very easy to get. It cost about 70 euros and took just a day. And so we can actually drive to any country in the EU. We've got his passport, and we can take him with us pretty much anywhere that we want to go.
That's right. But if we're flying someplace and we can't take the dog, we've found this service called Trusted Housesitter, which is, honestly, it's really great. You pay an annual fee to be part of it. I don't know, 150, it's a little under $200.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then on Trusted Housesitter, you can put your profile, a picture of your dog, what your dog's like, your house, your location, things that are important to you about people staying in the house. And then you get matched up with people who want to stay in your house during that window of time and want to take care of your dog. And in this situation, it's a win-win-win. And the win-win-win is it's a great thing for us because we have a house sitter who comes and stays at our house, and it doesn't cost us anything. The second win is for the people who are staying in our house. They get a place to stay, and their only cost is they just need to take care of the house and the pet. They don't actually pay us anything for that. And the third win is for the dog, because the dog gets to stay in his environment.
Yeah, it was really important to us not to have to board our dog. So it's worked out great for us. But I have to say that if you're thinking that sounds kind of weird, I am with you. I thought so too. I was really nervous about using this, but we have had just the best experience. I think we've used it 4 or 5 times. And the people that we've met have been amazing. They're just people who love travel, just like we do. We've had single people, we've had couples, we've had family with young kids. And it's been a really positive experience for us overall. So we really just can't say enough about trusted house sitters. And we'll leave a link below if you want to check that out.
So let's talk about some tips. First, if you're an employee, I mean, this kind of life requires a lot of trust between an employee and the company that they work for and their boss. And look, if you were a lousy worker, you missed your deadlines and
showed up late,
and then you said to your boss, "Oh, I want to go work from Bali." Well, that would likely be a very hard sell, and it should be. But for the people who we know, as well as for us for whom this has been a change that's been able to happen, a couple of things are true. First off, generally speaking, they're a high-valued, high-trust employee. They've been with the company for a while. They have been good performers for a while. And I think the pandemic shifted some things. There were a lot of jobs that were true in the pandemic or before the pandemic where you had to be in the office. But the pandemic proved that there were a lot of jobs that didn't require you be in the office, that they could actually be done remotely. So I think as bad as the pandemic was, it created an opportunity like this.
Now, we understand that there's a lot of jobs that just cannot be done remotely. We get that. But the good news is that since the pandemic, there are so many more remote work opportunities. And in fact, we have an entire video about how to find remote jobs, and I'll leave that linked above. Now, another tip for work and travel this one is for business owners. It might be that you need to make some adjustments in your business to make this work. Let me give you an example of something that we had to do. I have a business, it's a coaching business. I've done private coaching for about 8 years. I love one-on-one coaching, but when we moved to Portugal, between the time difference and our increased travel schedule, it was just harder to do private coaching. So I had to shift my business in order to accommodate this next stage of life. And I think that this is something we don't talk about enough, but we think that that's really what unretirement is. It's not about just working longer. It's about redefining your work life in a way that works for you so that you can include more of what matters in this next chapter of life. Next is to make a budget and then get creative. When we were in the Basque Country, we were having lunch outside in Biarritz, France, and there was just a beautiful view of these rolling hills. And I thought, how can we spend more time this summer in the south of France? And it seemed impossible because it wasn't in our travel budget. But I just kept asking, how can this work? How can this work? And then I remembered that we still have an active short-term rental license for the place that we have here. So we decided to rent out our place at the beach in high season in August here in Portugal and use that revenue to rent a place in the south of France. And so that made it possible for us to spend time in the south of France for a fraction of the cost. Now, it's also high season in the south of France, so this is not a perfect scenario, but it was a way that we were able to just get creative and ask the question, how can we make this work? And I think for the work and travel lifestyle, it does require some creativity and just continuing to ask, how can I make this work?
So we've talked about some of the pros and cons and how we approach this work and travel. And look, we understand that living this life we're very fortunate to be able to do this. And it is just not practical for everybody. We understand that. Maybe you've got a job or a career that you love, but it does require being in a physical location. Or maybe you have other life commitments today that require you to be in a specific place, and doing what this is just isn't practical. But the point of this video is that for many people, being able to do this is not as far off as you may think, and it actually is a great alternative to retirement. But frankly, it's also a good alternative for a lot of other people who want to be able to combine work and travel regardless of their age. And if you want to know more about our first 6 months here in Portugal, watch this video.